Iowa DOT is conducting a transportation planning study of the US 30 corridor between Lisbon and DeWitt. The DOT is following the Federal Highway Administration's Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL, process for this study. PEL studies are very early planning level studies that focus on data gathering and gaining an understanding of the corridor's existing conditions and expected future needs. The study corridor is approximately 40 miles in length, beginning near Charles Avenue just east of Lisbon and ending at 260th Avenue just west of DeWitt. This study is a result of collaboration between Iowa DOT and local stakeholders throughout the project corridor. This is the first of several public information meetings that will be held for this study. We are very interested in hearing from you, study stakeholders, those who live, work, and drive the US 30 corridor, so we can fully understand your transportation needs. Your input will help us evaluate the corridor and determine what improvements may be necessary to meet future travel needs. All comments are welcome and will be considered as part of the study. This first meeting is being held online to introduce the study and allow the Iowa DOT to share the study background, goals and objectives of the study, what we have learned so far, and seek your input and provide an opportunity to ask questions you may have. The goals of the US 30 PEL study are: develop a range of possible improvement alternatives for the corridor, including identification of the most appropriate number of roadway travel lanes needed to meet current and future transportation demands. Consider the benefits of potentially bypassing one or more of the existing communities along US 30, and prioritize possible improvement projects, identifying the sections of the corridor most in need so any future construction funding can be allocated and balanced against other needs across the state. Through this study, Iowa DOT will establish a vision for future investment along the US 30 corridor, which will account for existing safety, mobility, and infrastructure characteristics, as well as future needs. The Iowa DOT is seeking open dialogue between you and other project stakeholders. This timeline shows where we are in the project development process. This study is an exploratory exercise intended to review the existing infrastructure and consider future needs. It is the first phase in a much longer planning process. We are in the initial steps of the process, and all recommended improvements or findings are preliminary and will be further evaluated and developed in the future environmental planning and engineering studies. Iowa DOT does not have projects currently programmed for this corridor, aside from a bridge replacement project and other typical maintenance and rehabilitation work. This US 30 study is broken into 3 general steps. The first focuses on data gathering and corridor understanding. The second focuses on what future needs have been identified and how those needs may be addressed. The study will conclude with a vision document that will outline and prioritize any identified improvement projects that could be considered in future studies. If any improvement projects to this 40-mile corridor are identified as part of this study, it is likely the improvements will be phased over time. The US 30 study will result in a project roadmap that will assist Iowa DOT to plan for future needs and balance other construction projects across the transportation system. The study team is currently wrapping up the Step 1 efforts and are transitioning into activities as shown in Step 2. The study area of this planning study is outlined here. The corridor includes the communities of Mechanicsville, Stanwood, Clarence, Loudon, Wheatland, Calamus, and Grand Mound, and a crossing of the Wapsipinicon River. Current traffic counts estimate that the corridor carries between 2,200 and 5,600 vehicles per day, of which 13 to 24% are trucks and other heavy vehicles. Historical traffic counts and estimates suggest that these daily volumes have been nearly constant over the last 20 years. US 30 was originally part of the Lincoln Highway, the first transcontinental highway in the United States, providing an important link between Omaha, Nebraska and Chicago, Illinois. Today, US 30 is part of the Iowa Primary Highway System, and in 2006, US 30 was designated an Iowa Heritage Byway, which was intended to provide a driving experience that showcases Iowa's natural beauty, history, and culture. Some sections of US 30 in Iowa have been expanded or are currently being improved to meet the transportation needs at those specific locations. As part of this study, a public involvement plan has been developed. This plan describes the tools and strategies proposed for public involvement and agency coordination that will be used during the study. It identifies likely project stakeholder groups and how information will be shared with them, including state and federal resource agencies and the Federal Highway Administration. And it documents the ways the Iowa DOT will solicit feedback from the public and project stakeholders to identify project needs and evaluate possible transportation solutions. The public involvement plan will be updated regularly throughout the study to reflect newly identified stakeholders and other changes related to public outreach activities. The current public involvement plan can be found on the website listed at the bottom of this slide. As part of the public involvement plan, the study team sought input from local stakeholders at the beginning of this study. In August 2018, the US 30 team met with local project stakeholders through a series of small group meetings to seek input on the current use and future needs of the US 30 corridor. These meetings were scheduled with key individuals such as mayors, city administrators, county engineers, transportation officials, and regional planning associations. Topics and concerns noted by stakeholders at these small group meetings included opportunity for economic development, safety, traffic relief of I-80, railroad conflicts, increased truck traffic, and travel time and mobility within the existing corridor. As noted previously, we are near completion of the data collection and existing conditions analysis of this study. As part of the existing conditions analysis, our study team has considered the condition of the existing transportation system, such as bridge and roadway conditions, levels of existing traffic flow in the corridor, and recent crash history and safety performance. What we have found is some sections have deteriorating pavement conditions and bridges that could be reaching the end of their useful life, requiring possible replacement or major rehabilitation at some point in the future. Overall reasonable flow of traffic is maintained throughout the corridor, but some locations with minimal opportunities to pass slower moving traffic, and no overall crash trends or statistics that would suggest corridor-wide safety concerns. Only isolated locations where groups of crashes tend to occur, the majority of which are minor and result in property damage only. The next few slides summarize the findings of this existing conditions analysis. For the westernmost sections of the corridor, the existing roadway pavement is rough and in generally poor condition based on Iowa's DOT's pavement rating system. There are limited passing opportunities west of Stanwood and Mechanicsville. Limited passing opportunities are locations where marked passing zones are 1 mile or less in length. With these shorter passing zones, the presence of oncoming traffic could limit the ability of a vehicle to pass a slower moving vehicle, increasing delay and travel time. There were several locations west of Stanwood that appear in the crash history as having greater frequency of crashes compared to the overall study corridor. The number of crashes at these locations is not enough to warrant a concern because the totals are comparable to similar roadways across the state. Simply put, in relation to this US 30 study corridor, more crashes occurred at these locations than other parts of the study corridor. West of Mechanicsville, these crashes were a combination of intersection-related crashes, a cross-centerline crash, or a collision with an animal. Only a couple minor injuries were reported with these crashes. Near Mechanicsville, crashes were minor fender benders, all of which resulted in only property damage. These crashes may be consistent with input from the local police department, who stated that when trains are present, traffic can back up onto US 30, and this is when crashes tend to occur. Just east of Mechanicsville, while not a significant overall total of crashes occurred, those that did occur often resulted in injuries. The frequency of these injury crashes is greater than the average for similar roadways. At this location, road departure and left of center lane crashes were the predominant crash type. Of the injuries that did occur, nearly all were reported as possible or minor injuries. In Stanwood, a larger frequency of crashes occurred through town where more local roadway intersections are present. These were primarily minor property damage only crashes, with only a couple possible injuries reported. The US 30 intersection at the south leg of the junction with Iowa 38, just east of Stanwood, had more injury crashes compared to other similar roadways and intersections in Iowa. Most of these intersection crashes resulted from someone failing to yield to oncoming traffic and resulted in possible or minor injuries. East of Stanwood, the existing pavement remains in a deteriorated condition until just west of Clarence, where the condition improves slightly through town. East of Clarence, where the blue or pink shading is not present, the pavement is classified in good condition. A pavement improvement project was constructed along US 30 east of Clarence in 2014-2015. Passing opportunities throughout this section of the corridor are greater than those observed west of Stanwood. Passing zones are generally longer than a mile in length, providing greater opportunities for drivers to find an acceptable gap in oncoming traffic and safely completing a passing maneuver around a slower moving vehicle. Like Stanwood, crash data shows that a higher frequency of crashes occurred within Clarence city limits, where more local intersections are present and there is a greater exposure for possible crashes to occur. Most of these crashes resulted in property damage only, although one crash was reported as having a major injury. The section of US 30 west of and through Loudon had a greater number of crashes compared to other locations within the US 30 study area. However, the number of total and injury crashes over this segment are still less than the average considering other similar roadways in Iowa. The majority of the crashes west of Loudon resulted in property damage only, but one crash did include a fatality and another a major injury. Most of the injury-related crashes involved a vehicle crossing the center line and resulting in a head-on or sideswipe crash. A little over half of the crashes on this segment involved a collision with an animal or an intersection-related crash. Most of the intersection crashes were at the intersection with County Road Y14 in Loudon. It is worth noting that following the 2014-2015 pavement improvement project east of Clarence, which included construction of rumble strips, the crash data reviewed suggests a significant drop in crashes involving cross-centerline crashes, those that proved to be the most severe on this section of road. East of Loudon, through the eastern limits of our study corridor, where blue or pink shading is not present, pavement conditions are considered good. The one exception is a stretch of US 30 from near Wheatland to just east of the Wapsipinicon River, where pavement conditions are noted as fair. Through this section are several bridges that span the Union Pacific Railroad and the Wapsipinicon River and tributaries. These bridges are aging, and while no immediate concerns have been identified through bridge inspections, these bridges could be considered for possible replacement or rehabilitation at some point in the future. The area east of Wheatland to near the Wapsipinicon River crossing has more crashes than the average compared to other similar roadways in the state. However, these crashes consisted of primarily animal-related crashes, which is not a surprise considering the adjacent land surrounding US 30 at this location. In addition to the animal crashes, there were also some crashes at the intersection with County Road Y4E just south of Wheatland. At this intersection, crashes were predominantly the result of a driver failing to yield or were rear-end crashes. Only a couple minor injuries were reported. Predominantly, all the crashes resulted in only property damage. Passing opportunities still appear to be adequate over this section of US 30, but they do start to become limited again just west of Grand Mound. Delay and reduced travel speeds are possible in these areas where passing opportunities are limited. Like some of the other communities, a larger frequency of crashes occurred within Grand Mound where more local roadway intersections are present and the exposure for a crash to occur is greater. Most were property damage only, but a couple minor injuries were reported. Using the findings from the existing conditions analysis and input from stakeholders and the public received to date, the study is considering a range of possible improvements to the corridor that will be designed to meet future travel demands, including the most appropriate number of travel lanes and an improved roadway condition capable of maintaining and meeting mobility and safety needs within the corridor. At the onset of alternative development, all roadway type options are being considered and no predetermined solutions or decisions have been made. Improvements could include a range of roadway types, such as number of lanes, median, shoulder width, etc., including both 2-lane and 4-lane highways. A 2-lane rural highway is a road type similar to the existing US 30 corridor with 2 travel lanes and a combination of paved and granular shoulders, whereas a Super 2 is a 2-lane rural highway with characteristics that improve traffic flow and safety performance, most notably through the addition of passing lanes along the corridor in both directions of travel. And a 4-lane divided highway is a roadway section providing 2 basic travel lanes in each direction, separated by a median, partial or fully paved shoulders, and turn lanes. Depending on the level of access control desired, at-grade intersections, grade-separated interchanges, or a combination of the two may be present. The same 3 roadway types will also be considered in the more urban areas of the 7 cities along the corridor. A 2-lane urban highway, which would maintain the current roadway with some potential improvements, such as turn lanes or intersection reconstruction, whereas a Super 2 highway concept may include a 2-way left turn lane to remove left-turning vehicles from the through traffic flow, resulting in a less disruptive flow of traffic and delay in town. And a 4-lane divided highway would maintain 2 lanes in each direction, as shown in the bottom graphic, with a possible addition for a median and turn lanes when passing through the communities along the corridor. Through the review of all existing data collected, evaluation of projected future traffic volumes, travel performance of the corridor, and input from stakeholders, this study will conclude with a recommended roadway type that best fits the context of the study area and the transportation needs of the road users. The Iowa DOT is balancing transportation needs and impacts. Although the list is not all-inclusive, an evaluation that includes researching and documenting the resources in the study area will consider the possible environmental and community constraints within the corridor. Improvements in critical areas with significant amounts of resources are being carefully considered. An example of this are areas similar to the area near Wheatland and Loudon, where there are a lot of floodplains, wetlands, and woodlands. More detailed studies will come in future phases of project development. Additional public meetings will be planned and announced. We are currently anticipating the next meeting will be later this spring, with a 3rd public meeting expected to be in summer 2019. We are targeting completion of the US 30 study in the summer 2019 timeframe. The finding of the study will roll seamlessly into future studies as funding and needs dictate. Stakeholder input is key throughout this study. Stakeholder feedback will be considered throughout the project and will be paired with engineering and transportation planning principles and best practices to identify the most necessary, sustainable, and cost-effective solutions that will meet the needs of the corridor today and in the future. Please contact us with any questions or comments you have regarding the US 30 planning study using the website shown. You can also send your questions and comments to our district planners. Questions or comments regarding the Cedar County portion of the study corridor should be directed to Catherine Cutler. For Clinton County, please contact Sam Shea. We thank you for your time reviewing these materials. Please comment and provide your thoughts, concerns, and overall feedback.